I was the one that didn't have the ability to sign. And that is what I come back to a lot, and what I think we share in common is that idea is that you're not defined by, whatever tools you have in terms of like whether how you communicate or how you take in the world, right? So, could you do the next slide? Thanks for. So we also have a tech interpreter. Thank you, Becky. And they believe this is getting a little video of this because I think it's really critical for people to be able to ask for help when they need it. And I had to move all our stuff onto a PC, and I'm more of a Mac person.
That's his cue to say, this is saying insufficient
that's
space
great.
on card.
We got it.
Oh, okay.
You're okay?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Are you sure?
Get some more stuff.
Sure it's nothing I'm doing?
She's taping it too.
Okay. And thank you everyone for being flexible with us too. I want to get some video for her portfolio. And so you're asking, well, what is a portfolio? And I think this is the kind of audience, let's be careful of our time. How much time do we have?
2 hours.
Half hour?
No, you have a full hour.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But feel free to self-regulate, and I think this is the kind of audience that's okay, ask questions. We don't want to get too far off the schedule, but if what I say particularly doesn't make sense, because she's a lot clearer with her words and concise than I am, please ask questions. But so really what this is that whole concept is really what it says right there, a person-centered planning tool that places the focus on individualized self-management. And that's one of the key aspects, I think, of developing anyone's education plan or even as they go forward, is to really begin to self-manage and self-advocate and find strategies to do that, but also maybe tools that can enrich your ability to do that. We could switch to the next slide. So this is just a little bit, I'm not going to read this slide. This is for, did people get handouts or is there copies of the slides on the website? Is there a website or anything?
We do not have a PepNet website, and
Okay.
maybe that's something we need to talk about. But
please, if you, at the end of this, we would love to send you, right, Dorothy, we would love to send you copies of our slides.
Well, and you've sent it to me, which I've given to interpreters, but I can send it out to whoever's we've got email on.
And we're really welcome. We welcome any ideas you had or questions. But this gets into a little bit more detail about what it is. But really, just to highlight a couple of points here, it's the idea for people to manage their own materials. So if you think over time, all that experience a person has in high school, whether it's goals they may have made or maybe activities or something that's really meaningful, it's a chance for them to capture that and collect it. And we also, I talked briefly about the idea of doing video resumes, which a lot of folks now in vocational rehabilitation and some of the how many of us are familiar with the term brokerages? I'm using that, and I better make sure. Okay, excellent. For those of you that aren't familiar, it's really that it helps facilitate funding for people that have lifespan supports. Personally, I believe, though, the idea of making a busy video resume might work for maybe typical people that are just working with, say, vocational rehabilitation, which I think is technically a lifespan support, isn't it? Because the file never closes. Okay, I'm not going to...
Well, the file does close upon employment.
Right.
Later. But it doesn't mean they can't come back.
I'm out of my area. But the idea, again, is to develop maybe work samples of experiences you've had that you can maybe even capture with not just video, but anything that you might have done, maybe a copy of a resume, as Dorothy mentioned, or other artifacts or documents that might be helpful. List of accommodations, the summary of performance is another one. We can do next. So real quickly, just the why. One thing is that you can have, with the idea with the transition portfolio, with its web base, it can be just a simple email, and it's a web address. So Dorothy and I, we can open up her portfolio on my iPad, her phone, that computer. We had to be flexible and open it up on the computer that Becky provided us. So it's a website. And we really are very aware of disclosure and privacy, so it's password protected. We actually use WordPress, but there are other ways to do this. You can use Google. Google has a service for this. And later we're going to talk about a project that we're working on to make this process really cognitively accessible. And what that means is integrating universal design to make it really person-centered, the tool itself really easy for somebody who maybe doesn't read, or like I work with a lot of people with pretty comprehensive, or let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Very unique skills, and sometimes the tools we give them aren't really useful. So the idea is to individualize that for people. It also, this idea of involvement is, when we talk about, it was cool, the panel today, just hearing about people's hopes and dreams. And really, I think it was hard for the panel to articulate that, but we know that it's often even harder for students to form that when they're younger. But those ideas that they might have, or their strengths and their interests, all of that information, all that stuff that's about them, their story, sometimes gets lost, right? And sometimes people in our roles, they change. So this idea that it stays with the person and grows with the person is really key. And for people to reflect on what they've done. Sometimes it's hard for, if I get, like I could imagine if you had been asked, Dorothy, on that panel, your hopes and dreams, in a meeting, you might be able to pull up her portfolio and reflect on something that she thought of years past, right? Okay, we can keep moving back to this. So everyone has a story, and Becky, we're about to go, if you could go into her site. I don't know, I think we already entered the password. We wanted to spend the rest of the time, the majority of the time, really talking and showing you Dorothy's portfolio. We have some slides, but we wanted to, let's see if it works here. Oh, excellent. All right. So, Dorothy, tell them a little bit about this, and I'll jump in.
I really like it. I like what I've done here. This is something that I can show my boss. If I'm trying to get hired somewhere. Employer. It will be open-minded to me and get to know who I am, what I have to offer. Also showcases my skills, my abilities, my interests, what I like to do for work and whatnot. Yeah.
That was awesome. I mean, because we had some slides about that, but you were thinking about that. Do you think we should show them, if you click on the All About Me, which is up there, yeah. So the drop downs, if you drop down to, well, what do you think we should start with, Toby?
My skills.
Go ahead and talk to them about what they're.
I have a video here. One video.
She has multiple videos.
Several videos.
And if you click, yeah, each one of those. So you can click on one.
Sign language. Fluent sign language.
You want to go ahead and give them.
I speak sign language. I met Adelka when I was 9 years old. Adelka and I are talking about my future plans. Growing up, I learned how to sign when I was 3. I always could hear and understood what was being said. I prefer to sign. Let me interpret for you. At the summer program, some kids are deaf, some of the kids are hard of hearing. Oh, fun. I love to sign.
So if you go back, and more skills under her All About Me.
And the touch chat. Go to touch chat.
Oh, number 1? Oh, it's number 1 on Fluent First one. There you go. Oh, you were there.
There.
Yeah.
That one.
Oh, weird. Okay, great. Sorry. That's why we have the technology interpreter for us.
I use touch chat for communication. It is an iPad application. I can pre-program prompts or what to say to children when I work with them. How are you? What's your name? With my touch chat application, I can help students with correcting errors. One of my volunteer jobs is to help first grade students in the math class. Here I am helping a student count to 1 to 100. Aslan, please listen. Aslan, please listen count to 1 to 100. I am learning how to teach with my voice.
Earlier, do you mind if I say something? I was thinking of the panel because, Dorothy got the question. Someone asked about how she uses touch chat. And I don't know if that person is still here, if they remember asking the question, but.
She's transporting a student home and
Oh,
coming back.
that's okay.
She'll be back.
No worries, but do people remember that question from them? And I just have that sense, and I have this sense all the time because particularly folks that are vocational rehabilitation, VR, you can imagine when you get a new client, you could see this, you would really start to understand how somebody actually uses the tools they have. And I just want to say, like this morning, I'm going to soon be a grandfather, and my daughter came over to watch my son, and my daughter-in-law, and we made the connection. She teaches swimming, and she worked with a young woman that I worked with, or just recently, briefly interacted with. I don't actually work with her directly, but she was telling me because this young woman is nonverbal, and she had no idea how the person communicated. And that moment, again, just reinforced to me, like sometimes we don't provide people with tools so they can actually begin to self-advocate. They don't have to necessarily speak. The woman didn't necessarily have to be able to speak. But when she got new people on her team, it really would have been great if the teachers would have seen that she can ride a bike, she can swim. She might not be able to talk, but she had all these skills. And it was really, again, just this morning, another profound example. And one of the first times we met, should we show them your work? Actually, if you go to the front, the first page, I think if you just, it's on the home page. If you just click on that, yeah, right there. So, you wanted to, you talked about this earlier. You wanted to see this? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that was one of the first things you tell them, like, because I remember that really vividly. That was the first time we met in April, and we just quickly made that video. And why did you? At the time you said something really that touched me about it, but.
I made this because people often assume that all people who use sign language are deaf. And I'm not deaf. I'm not deaf. I can hear and understand English. I just use my touch chat to communicate back. It's tooling. Yeah.
And I really appreciated that because we're not defined by, we shouldn't be defined by labels or eligibility. I mean, we should be empowered by eligibility for my opinion, and that's what we have to inspire people to feel that way, to not feel stigmatized if whatever. I just think that's really important. You think we should show them a little of your work history? Yeah, that'd be cool. So if you click on work history. So one of the things we haven't shown is, yeah, the great thing about a web-based portfolio, and I both just click on one, just to show people the resume for example. So you can see that, like, if you have a document like the summary of performance, actually, if you go back to All About Me, because we've talked about, well, resume's fine too. So you could download this. Now, this is one area that, we're as a team still thinking about, even though this is password protected. Karen and I, we're both on Dorothy's team. We're really, should we have an address on there? And maybe that's something we need to think about with resumes. It is, but like I said, it is password protected. It's like anything. It's on our district server. Maybe you have thoughts about that. That would be great to hear from you, because we want to develop this just so it's a tool and not something that people are like, oh no, I'd never do that because I don't want my students or my child's resume or address on there. So, but more importantly, if you go back to All About Me, not more importantly, because actually the resume is probably the most important thing to you. I know, but summary of performance came up earlier today, and I just wanted to show Ann, right? Was it Ann? Yeah, like you can, so go ahead and click on that. Again, that's readily there for the person to hand to an employer. It's personalized. It goes through the person's. This door again is like kind of captures in writing what we did in video. Provides a bunch of recommendations for her to accomplish her post-secondary goals. I think one thing, having heard the talk today, and Ann, I was appreciated what people were talking about maybe you could also include some of these accommodations if they're going to college. So we can go back out of that. Do we have any questions so far? Are people feeling okay? Feeling good? All right. We wanted to show you, if you click on work history, just the title. And that's the thing, if this is a website, someone can explore it on their own. You can, yeah, you will. Right.
I am going to Bertha Homes, where I'm volunteering. One of my jobs is helping in a math classroom. When I arrive, I need to check in. Sometimes I get to teach staff how to sign. Here I am, organizing books to be shown using Dewey Decimal Systems.
So the idea with a video resume, we might now take your next Dorothy, your at Head Start, with obviously people's permission. We might get some additional footage working. We demonstrated, she was able to demonstrate how she uses touch chat with children, but we might show more teaching, right? For like increasing the resume. So again, this is just a way for Dorothy to collect, or anyone to capture really the strengths and interests and preferences they have. The data. The data. What you said? The data. I think it was more of the story. So we could have some questions. We wanted to show you what Dorothy talked about a little. Can we go back into the PowerPoint? Is that okay? Do you want to show them anything else on this? Can't think of it. Okay. We wanted to show you a little bit. There's a lot of other content on there, but we just wanted to emphasize the vocational piece, and then so if we go out and go back to the PowerPoint, oh, cool. Okay, we can go through these slides.
resume on, and
So a lot of folks that are in supported employment are using that and just putting it on their websites, and they might even have it on YouTube. You'd really want to have someone's permission, right? Because that's disclosure. We use WordPress, but we also use Google at our Connections program because we want it to be able to transfer with the student.
right.
Right now, they just changed this year. I've been doing this 5 years, but now the WordPress, she doesn't have administrative access. I do, because I'm still an employee, but she's 21 now. So they're tightening up. But that's what we wanted to talk to you folks about today, because I've been thinking about this for about longer. So my biggest hope is that we give tools to students that they can use across a lifetime. They're not dependent on me. They're not dependent on one person. You know, one thing about our profession is that we really want to encourage independence, autonomy, you know, and empower people. So one of the projects that I was able to connect Dorothy with is it's a research institute. It's Cognitopia is their name, but they are working on developing a cognitively accessible portfolio. So it's easier to use, and we're going to show you a couple features of that. Dorothy interned this summer with them, and she's going to continue to work with them as I would just consider, I mean, you're one of their colleagues at this point. You want to tell them about this? You haven't actually got to use it yet, have you? So. It is actually live. Yeah, no, it's not used. So one of the things that we wanted to show you is just the idea of being able, because again, I work with a lot of people that are nonverbal and maybe non-readers, writers, and actually a lot of teachers don't want to use WordPress because they find it too difficult. And I mean, so even us, you know, people that feel like sometimes intimidated by technology. I'm one of those people, even though I use a lot of technology. I think that's okay. So my goal is really to make things more easy for people. So the idea with this is that someone would just quickly be able to take a video or a summary performance or the resume and drag and drop it into their portfolio. Now, what's cool, if we had more time, but you could go to the next slide, Dorothy and I, we actually could have showed, we've done this already. Right. This idea of being able to create just a QR code, right? So, does anyone use QR codes yet out there? So you could scan this right now and go to her portfolio. What's really cool about what they're working on is that there's something in the tech field where, and that's where this guy who's here, the tech guy of the school, he would be really into this. He's missing this because there's these little tokens. So you could, a person could give somebody a card like this, and the person that they give it to, the potential employer, right, or a VR counselor or a new person on the team, might have access to her website for a certain amount of time. So it doesn't allow for, it takes care of that security issue, right? And it also gets at, what is one of the things that you and Patty, your VR, I know she's not VR, she's your employment specialist. Job developer. You really wanted to be able to send the employer just what, right?
A resume.
And right, and also you didn't want to be able to show them the pictures of you doing four-wheeling. So anyway, we're really excited. What do you? Should we ask them if they have any questions? Did you have any other thoughts on it too, Dorothy?
I think there are questions. Any questions?
Well, I want to know how difficult it is to set this up, because I'm very technology ignorant. And every time I watch your presentation, it's like, oh, this is awesome, this is cool. But I get scared of the technology. How complex is it to set up?
So this project with Cognitopia makes it real easy. designed, it's universally designed, in that in mind. So it's, we're working with the idea that somebody would be nonverbal, non-reading, and, uh, and that's really where I like to start, you know. I think your question's a good one. Like the WordPress that we have, we started working together in April. And although I know I have middle school students that will get online at home and add content, Dorothy never felt comfortable enough. I mean, even though she could do it, she was actually adding the stuff on her computer when we were there, but it never became to the point where she was using it on a daily basis.
Right.
Adding herself.
Right. But I work with a number of students that do. Now, Josh Barber and I are working also on, so we're using a couple different types of ways to do this. So Google Docs is fairly straightforward to use. Now, if you go to our last slide, not the question. So, and I'd be really happy to send this to people too. I have a lot of ideas about transition on a website that we maintain. What I want to do with Josh and his students is we're going to put a step-by-step, a little task analysis of how to do it for Google Docs. We already have it for WordPress. I don't know if anyone here uses WordPress. Probably not. A little bit. So to get back to your question, you know, contacting these guys, for example, who now actually you might even talk to Dorothy because she's the only one that speaks sign, right? And actually ask her. That would be really cool, by the way, because I really believe that, you know, you could actually answer their questions better than the people there, obviously. So, yeah.
You have a video phone? You wanna give them your number?
Yeah, 541.
Well, maybe we could email it to everybody.
Send it out by email.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're saying to use Google Docs to set up, but like on Google, can you set up a password protected website?
Yeah, you can.
Because like with my students, I use to get them ready before they go to college, to get their audiogram on. Well, they leave with a 3-ring binder that
Right.
I just don't want to pass on that part.
No, that's okay.
But,
That's great.
but I mean,
you're giving them a
you
binder.
know,
Many people
their
like
last
to give people a binder.
IEP, you know, I have all that information, so when they go to student services at whatever college they end up at, they have all that information.
Right.
But it would be so much nicer to have them just go and say, bring up my website, there it is.
Arthur, I'm really glad you brought that up, because first of all, I want to compliment you for making the binder. And, you know, we have some pretty solid transition programs in Eugene too, where the folks have they provide people with binders. But what Josh and I at Connections found pretty early on is that, you know, a lot of people have a hard time managing their stuff, you know, and a lot of people don't generalize, obviously, even me, myself. So, like, this is why we really try to emphasize developing something like this. It addresses that executive functioning piece that everyone talks about, but doesn't really, you know, give people the tools. So I think I would encourage you to just maybe start to experiment a little bit, you know, not take it all on, but there are aspects of the binder that really fit nicely into Google Docs. And again, like Josh and I and his students will have something up there pretty soon. The next step would be, if you're really interested in it, would be to contact Dorothy, because she might have some ideas about the project, and maybe there's a way that you folks could practice with something too. Yeah.
I was just wondering about, it seems like before the school districts, they own the website, right? You can click on all the tabs.
Right.
Be able to look at the different pages. So if you have Google Docs, would you only be able to look at certain things that wouldn't use that, like, for the school district, right?
Well, the Google Docs is very similar. It has the same problem where you'd have to make a different portfolio if you wanted to separate out, just say work experience, right? If you didn't want to have your all about me that showed your interest, you know, was four-wheeling or what have you. So we actually, Dorothy was really one of the first people to kind of point that out, and that's why with the, again, like with what Toby is doing, is that they're trying to be able to individualize that, so a person can pick and choose what they want to share, what parts of their portfolio they want to share. But yes, unfortunately, well, like WordPress, you can put password protection on, so you can only have, like, sometimes what we'll do is we'll put videos on that the student only wants to share with certain people, and you can password protect them. But it's an extra step. And I know I'm getting into some complicated stuff, I'm sorry, but it is a great, I really appreciate that question, because you have the same problem, right?
Yes.
Yes, Steve?
I don't want employers to see some stuff, so I put on the password.
Yeah.
You know, thinking to myself, if I needed something like this done, I'd pay someone to do it. And then I'm a VR counselor, and I thought if my client needed it done, I'd pay someone to do, you know, if it needed to be done and my client couldn't do it. So that's a business. I'm starting to think, you know, if you know how to do it and no one else knows how to do it, or very few people know how to do it, you can create a business and hire Dorothy to do it.
I agree.
So,
I really agree. I know. And I think that's the future personally. I think that, you know, this concept that someone's going to do it for them, that's what we want to shift, right? We want to start to shift that to where people feel empowered to do it themselves. But great example of like someone that has empowered themselves, where they can actually maybe provide that for others.
and make a living, right, and make some money
Because
doing it.
I think, you know, again, I'm the person that doesn't have the ability, you know, right, to sign, you know, and it's something
Right.
Yeah.
oh, we have,
So what apps are you using? Is it called, My Touch? It's called My Touch Chat or something? Is that what that is for communication?
Yeah, touch chat.
It's called Touch Chat.
That's all. Yep. Touch chat.
yeah, but
I tried to pull
Oh
it
yeah,
up,
I
but I
tried to
couldn't
pull
find
it
it.
up on my phone, but I
we can
can't.
show you the app.
Okay.
We can show you that, and that's interesting, because that's why we made the video of her showing people how she uses the app. One thing we could do is we could actually have the icon of the app and maybe information about how you could get it. But we could show you too. It's a pretty common one for augmentative communication. The the portfolio application that she's helping develop is going to be called My Life, and it's a web-based
Yeah, My Life.
application. How we doing?
June, and that's something we need to show the employer too. Use My Life.
Exactly. And I can't, I mean, I can't reinforce enough how often I've seen personally where as people transition into new teams, that even people with the best intentions, even the most brilliantly written IEPs, don't really capture a person's story, you know?
Exactly.
And even when people are really strong advocates, Dorothy's a really strong advocate, but people make assumptions about her, and she told you about that, but it's really common in other ways.
They assume, they judge.
Right. So, and that's why I think when we first met, we shared that passion about changing how people think about that, right?
And that's what we can do with My Life. That's to show your skills. And it's fun, you can play with it, and it's interesting, you can show you what your interests are, what you like to do, what your hobbies are. It's a great way to showcase all the things you're interested in.
Yeah. Oh.
I was just gonna say that, earlier before when we had the panel here and you had laughed, I
had actually asked a question about team collaboration, and you just answered it for me. You answered it wonderful. So you have this, you have a tool at your disposal to go if the team that you work with, and you start working with changes, and you want to bring somebody up to speed on your ideas or your goals or your interests or whatever, you could just easily pull this up. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was asking that to the panel, you know, because we, as a VR counselor, I see the teams quite often change, you know, from high school to college to work to job developers.
Yeah, and the team could change too, and then you just, the team will automatically have access to it right then and there, all together.
That's great.
Crazy. Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
You,
Thank you, guys.
yeah, this is great. Thank you for having us. Really, it's been a real privilege.
Yeah.